Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
22 after 8. Let's get those questions into the Commissioner. That's what it's all about. Michael's in Chiswick. You're through to Sir Bernard Hogan Howe.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning,
Hello.
Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Michael.
Yeah, my question to you is you claim to be committed to tackling endemic corruption within the police. Are you simply paying lip service when internally your organisation hounds whistleblowers like James Patrick, who exposed the crime report fiddling?
I don't think that's fair, Michael. I think, first of all, we are committed to rooting out corruption, and we have many officers whose only job is to look for corrupt officers, and they're pretty good at it. We don't have many, but where they are, then I'm determined, as police officers are determined, is to get rid of corrupt or violent or dishonest police officers. So we do an awful lot on that. I think in terms of PC Patrick, who's now, as you know, has announced his resignation, the misconduct hearing which he went through was about something that happened before his whistleblowing. And what we are doing is I've asked Her Majesty's Inspector to look at our crime recording processes, and we expect in May to hear whether or not they think James Patrick's allegations are true or not. So I don't think we've hounded him. And finally, just in terms of the objectivity of it, I thought it was important that the Met didn't look at his potential misconduct. That was reviewed by a senior officer from another force, and his misconduct panel was also chaired by somebody from another force. So we tried to exclude the Met from that process so that we weren't involved in a dispute with one of our own officers who appears to criticise us.
Back to you in a second, Michael. Just to remind my listeners, PC Patrick, of course, was the whistleblower who told a panel of MPs that massaging figures to hit performance targets was, in his words, an ingrained part of policing culture. He claimed serious offences such as rape and child sex abuse were recorded as crime-related incidents or no crimes. And initially, the Commissioner said there perhaps was a grain of truth to some of what he said. Back to you, Michael.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Hogan. I mean, I met you at the Home Affairs Select Committee, one of the inquiries into sort of police corruption and standards. And I asked you if I could meet you for some time to explain to you about police corruption. I'm not sure if you, at the head of the Metropolitan Police, are actually aware of what's going on the ground. I mean, the paper reports this week were about Alan Gibson, the head of your professional standards department, trying to suppress what James Patrick was saying.
Right, Michael, I'm not sure what exactly...
Do you recall meeting Michael?
I can't offhand. I'm sure I may have, but I'm not sure that...
We shook hands.
Well, you might accept, Michael, I shake hands with a lot of people who offer themselves to me, and if we don't meet again, it's difficult to recall always. I think the only thing I can say is we are taking these allegations seriously. I've asked the Inspectorate of Policing to come in and look at it. They're in the process of doing that, and perhaps we all should reserve judgment until they've got to the bottom of that. Now, the Deputy Mayor for Policing has also asked their auditors to have a look at the figures, and at the end of that, we'll be in a better position. I would think what I was saying, as Nick reminded me, was that, of course, none of our figures are perfect. We know that. We know that not all crimes reported. In terms of rape, it is thought that 85% of rape is never even reported, let alone recorded. So the stats never tell us everything, and errors are made. I think at the last account, the Home Office guidance was about 670 pages. It's entirely possible we make mistakes. I think what we have to establish is, do we have an organisation, a culture that intends to make those mistakes, or is it dishonestly fiddling the figures? I don't believe we have, but I think it's best, rather than me make that judgment, we get someone independently to.
Lastly, David Winnick, the MP, asked if there should be an inquiry into the Met, that panel of MPs. Do you agree with this idea?
No, I mean, although the Home Affairs Select Committee had, in my view, probably had decided before I appeared, and certainly by the end of my appearance had decided, that they would carry out an inquiry, and we'll do everything we can to support that inquiry. They weren't clear on what grounds they were making that decision.
Did they give you a fair hearing then when you say that they'd already decided?
Well, it's not for me to judge whether they give me a fair hearing.
You must have a sense of it, Sir Bernard.
I think they had a certain agenda when they arrived in the room, and probably so did I. But I think the big thing, the only thing I would say, is that we will cooperate with the inquiry. It's not clear exactly what it's intended to address, but of course one of the things that they challenged us about was the Met too big. Well, it is a big organisation, and London is. So I can't understand how we're going to separate parts of London off and say we'll have another police force. But I'm sure that's something they'll address in their inquiry to follow.
Barry's in Chingford. You're on the radio, Barry. Go ahead.
Good morning, Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Barry.
Sir Bernard, every time I see photos of you, you look absolutely immaculate in your uniform. And when I was a younger man, every police officer from the lowest rank upwards looked equally as smart as you did. But my issue is these awful, ill-fitting, high-visibility jackets. They look like a bunch of construction workers. And those stab-proof vests, what on earth are they doing? Why aren't they tailored to fit? I mean, it's like they borrowed them from someone. I mean, are they one size or what?
You're not offering to make them, Barry, because you've made a very compelling case. Sir Bernard.
Barry, I'm going to have to agree with you, I'm afraid. First of all, we are doing something to improve the high-vis, because I've worked in other parts of the country where they've been better. But I think in the past we've not spent enough money on them. We've pared back and I think made the wrong decision.
What are you doing then? What's happening with the high-vis
We're just in the process of trying to get a better one, and we are rolling those out. So it may be where Barry's seen them, they haven't all rolled out
what
yet.
way better? Tailored or...?
Yeah, and also just better quality. I mean, different parts of the country have had a better quality and better padding. Now, you may say we need no more padding, but what it means is that they look the part better. So we are trying to improve the kit. In terms of body armour, you wouldn't believe it, Barry, but I think it is tailored. It's certainly fitted to a certain standard. But I'm afraid whenever you've worn body armour, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to wear body armour, it's pretty uncomfortable and it's not very complimentary to many figures. So I'd have to accept both challenges, but we are trying to improve the way we look. And finally, regardless of what we give people in kit, they ought to wear it properly. So they should wear the hat. They should wear their kit smartly, and they should keep it clean. So I'm afraid for me that's a professional standard we should all maintain.
Do you ever upbraid officers that you come across?
I upbraid supervisors more than I do officers, because they're the ones who are paid to do the job that I expect them to do, which is to challenge people about standards.
And why is it important a copper looks smart, Sir Bernard?
I think two reasons. As Barry said, if people look the part, it gives you a good start. If you then don't deliver, then you've got a problem. But I think if you arrive as a professional, looking unkempt, looking like you don't care, looking like you're not very thorough, then there's a fair chance that's what you are. And I think police officers in this country have got some very high standards. We deal with people reasonably, we listen to their concerns, and where we have to, we exercise force reasonably. So part of that is about looking the part, and I expect high standards. And I tell you, while I have in charge in the Met, what you won't find is that we have T-shirts, he said obsessively, but I don't agree with it. So I'm afraid for me, how you look does matter.
All right. Mick's on the Isle of Dogs. Go ahead, Mick.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Sir Bernard.
Morning, Mick.
No, this is not a thing. I'm not going to run the police service down. I just want to know a couple of things. I mean, I've got no reason to like the police, but I would not do their jobs for the simple reason what you're just talking about, the stab vest. I don't see why a bloke's got to get up, go out, do his job, and wear one of them. But my point is this. I'm an old thief, old villain, whatever you want to call me. But I've been straight for 20 years. But when I moved up north, the attitude of the police up north is totally different to the Met.
In what way?
I got pulled a couple of times up there because of the work we was involved in. And as soon as they heard the voice from London, when they used to, I don't know if they still do it, but they CRO you. And when my record come back, I mean, they was a little bit funny, but they was friendly. They didn't try and make you out that you were still doing what you done years ago.
And what happens in the Met, briefly, Mick?
I was driving along with a fella. He got stopped. As soon as they CRO'd me, they went, "Are you standing next to him?" Blah, blah, blah. He's extremely violent. This, that and the other. None to use firearms. And the old attitude of the officers who pulled us changed.
And one of you had used firearms in the past, just to make this clear?
This was 30 odd years ago.
OK, but you had used firearms. Sir Bernard?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mick. I mean, it's difficult to draw conclusions from one or two experiences. I mean, my experience, having worked in the North and been from the North and being in the South, I think broadly officers try and be similar in both areas. There's no doubt if you get information that somebody's got previous convictions, it modifies your attitude. You're more suspicious, to be honest. Even then, though, I would expect people, whether somebody's got a criminal background or not, to be treated reasonably and professionally. I don't expect people to be arrogant or anything.
It was just
but you can put them on guard in a way that is what you have experienced, I suspect.
But Bernard, if you'd used a gun, you can hardly be surprised that coppers are going to be a little bit wary of you.
Yeah, I know that, Nick. We spoke about this years ago.
Did we? Yes. Are you the one who went into banks with guns a lot?
Yes.
Well, I
Mick,
remember...
after you said that, I think in the North you're pretty generous, actually.
Yeah, but, I mean, that was a long while ago. I mean, I've been straight. I know it's a stigma you'll never get rid of.
Yeah.
It was just the attitude of the officers, especially in Staffordshire. And they went, Cockney accent, this, that and the other, blah, blah, blah. But when it come back on the radio what I've been done for.
Yeah, using guns.
They did change a little, but they were still friendly.
I mean, I agree with you, mate. I think regardless of someone's past, we ought to try and treat people reasonably professionally.
Yes.
But I can understand, I think we all probably, I think you're saying you can understand that there's an initial reaction when you find out somebody's got a significant criminal past and you are trying to work out, I don't know the reason you were stopped, but you put on guard, is my only point. But even then, I'd expect you to be treated reasonably.
All right, we leave that. Last question before we go to the news. Sir Bernard, are Northern Coppers more friendly?
Well, I would say, of course. No, I honestly don't think... I mean, it's like saying to say, are people in the North more friendly than people in London? That's not been my experience. I think what you get in London is a real challenge, which is, first of all, life's so busy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, you go into a shop to buy a newspaper, there's 10 people behind you in a queue.
Yes.
You go into a shop in the North, it might be you and the shopkeeper. You have a chat. Good morning. That's not them more friendly. They've got more time to be friendly. So it seems to me that's the big thing I've noticed down here, is not that the people are less friendly, but the pace of life means that they haven't got that few seconds to just be human and do the things that, in one sense, are a waste of time, but in another sense, make a day, don't they?
The pace of life moves on. We're late to the news. More calls coming up, of course, to Sir Bernard Hogan Howe after the LBC News here at 8:33.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan Howe, told LBC the Plebgate scandal has left an unfortunate legacy.
You always reflect, you know, could I have done something differently? Could we have? So it would be better had that not happen, because I think that's left an unfortunate legacy for us to deal with, and that also a relationship with politicians that's not helpful.
Sir Bernard also told Nick he hopes his credibility hasn't been damaged by the row. A report's claiming almost 1 million people in the UK have turned to a food bank for emergency supplies in the past year. The figures from the Trussell Trust come as more than 600 church leaders have written a letter calling for MPs to do more to tackle food poverty. Around 300 people are said to be still missing after a ferry sank off South Korea's southern coast. At least 2 people have died. Hundreds of those on board were high school students on a school trip. Tens of thousands of children in England are expected to miss out on a place at their first choice of primary school this year. Families across the country are finding out this morning where their child will go in September. At 8:15, the FTSE was up 47 at 65.88. And LBC weather, a cold start for London and the South East, then dry though with long sunny spells. Highs today of 15 degrees, remaining fine, dry and bright in the south of the UK. Cloud and outbreaks of patchy rain will move southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England. LBC News Time, it's 8:34.
The all-day breakfast, only served till midday. The bottomless coffee, only includes 1 refill. Some broadband packages are like that. They say they're unlimited, but leave you wanting more. TalkTalk is different. Our broadband packages start from just £3.50 a month, plus £15.95 line rental. And they're 100% totally unlimited. No download limits, no caps, and we'll never slow you down. For our best deals, visit talktalk.co.uk/April. A brighter home for everyone. Contract and £30 connection fee applies.
Dad had a nasty car accident when we were on holiday abroad. It's not been easy for Mum.
Hey, things are looking up. We got the best advice to help us all get through this. That's why I'm with Irwin Mitchell Solicitors.
If you or your family have suffered an injury abroad, you need the best possible advice, rehabilitation and support to get your lives back on track. Call us on 08000 325 325 or visit irwinmitchell.com to see how we can help you.
Stand by.
We're authorised and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority.
Shell V-Power Nitro Plus unleaded and diesel performance fuels are the only fuels inspired by our technical partnership with Ferrari. They're designed with our unique double-action formula to actively clean and protect vital engine parts. So you're not just filling up with over 60 years of Shell and Ferrari technology and innovation, you're also filling up with... Fill up with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus performance fuels today.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
It's 8:36 and it's your calls to the Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan Howe, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. Matt is in Youghal and you're through to Sir Bernard. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, hello, Sir Bernard.
Good morning, Matt.
London taxi driver, hiya.
And I work nights, and every night I see lines and lines of minicabs outside every nightclub venue throughout the West End, etc. And also as well, a lot of these drivers, they're not actually with a private hire operator. They actually, what they do, they bung the clipboard Johnny outside the club, say, I don't know, 20 or 30 pounds, and then they can work it every night. I mean, recently we had Chris Hume's daughter on the front page of the Standard who was attacked by one. And, I mean...
moving you to your question, if I may, Matt, what is your question of the Commissioner?
Don't you find that, also, there's 20 sexual assaults approximately a week for these minicabs. Don't you think that's shameful and embarrassing to the Metropolitan Police that you represent?
Well, I think the first thing is, I'm not sure about the 20 a week, Matt. Where you get those figures from, I'm not sure. But in terms of the fact that any assault is bad, so I accept that. You will know that we do carry out quite a few operations together with the licensing authorities, because we are no longer, the Met is no longer the licensing authority. So the local authorities, in this case Westminster, have a taxi unit who go out and check on licensing conditions. And we have operations from time to time which target that. So I think it's every couple of months, you have a big operation and go and try and catch them. I also know that patrolling officers in Westminster take a great interest in this group of people and do their best to disrupt the touts and arrest people or get prosecutions where there is unlicensed taxiing. So it is important we do take action against these people, but we share the responsibility with the licensing authority.
Quick response from you, Matt. Quick response.
Sorry, I mean, don't you need to do a better job? Because at the present time, sorry,
it's all right.
It's just got out of control. It's absolutely terrible out there.
Well, first of all, as a result of what you said, I will ask actually, and I'll go and have a look, because I've not been out of Westminster for a few months, so I'll go and have a look. But I think the other thing is that, it's always been a problem. The West End particularly, there's often not enough taxis for the number of people around, so the demand is there, and meeting that demand, there's always been a competition between hackneys and private hire. That's been there as long as I've been in the job, in every city I've worked in. So, and it's often the complaint of the hackney cabs that in fact the others are less regulated and both complain about each other. So it's a chronic problem. But if you say it's getting a lot worse, then I'll go and have a look and I'll ask the commander there.
Action this day. We'll, I'm sure, hear back from one of the Commission's teams on how it goes. Let's just feed in some of the questions coming from the emails, texts and the tweets. We'll come back to calls in just a second. Maureen in Woodford. Are the police who were involved and seemed to fail in the Cyril Smith case years ago need to be investigated?
Well, this is something that happened in the Northwest, I think, predominantly. The main reports I've seen are in the press, so I know nothing else, really. So I'm sure what will happen is that the Northwest, I think it's Greater Manchester Police area, although it wasn't Greater...
wasn't it?
It was, although I don't think it was Greater Manchester Police then. Greater Manchester Police would be created in 1974, right. And I'm not sure when these allegations are around. So you're right, it was Rochdale. So I'm sure that people will have a look, but for what I see, it looks as though the police did investigate, but there is an allegation that the investigation was stopped higher up the chain. I'm sure somebody is in the process of looking at that, although as we've found, these historical events are quite hard to investigate.
Had you ever heard anything about Cyril Smith?
No.
Jags in Southall. The police in Ealing are doing a great job. However, there seems to be a constant level of inexperienced officers in areas who have little knowledge of the ground they're covering. Do you feel we're losing local knowledge again after years of investment in neighbourhood teams, as officers are focusing more on career than community?
I don't take that with Jags. I mean, I'm sorry if that's your experience locally, but we are just recruiting again, which means that, over the next 6 months, I think we're going to take about 700 or 900 officers in. So I think the great joy of that is you're going to get new people. Young, generally, not always. Less experienced, I accept. But you've got an energy and a vibrancy that I think you will appreciate. We do try and keep our neighbourhood officers in place as long as possible. And because we've changed the model over the last year, it's possible there's been a turnover of people. But generally, we've got inspectors now in the neighbourhoods. We've got officers who do stay there together with CSOs who play a vital part of a neighbourhood team. So I hope that you find that the good people who are prepared to stay there, we do probably get more turnover than I would like. Officers do, for their own reasons, want to go on and become a detective, right. Want to work in traffic. I think we'd all understand people want to develop a career. But on the whole, people in neighbourhoods do want to stay there. One
more, James, you're going to be the next caller. Let's put one more email in. This is Rachel in Bexley. Nick Ferrari has been talking about Peter Clark taking over investigation into possible Islamic extremism in schools in Birmingham. Is he the right man for the job?
I'm not going to comment on this particular issue directly because I don't know the facts. You know, it's something
What do you
about...
need to know?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm just going to say that in terms of the allegations in the Birmingham schools, I don't know the facts. And it's this a decision of the Education Secretary. I think Peter Clark has been made the Education Commissioner. The only thing I can say, that Peter Clark I know is a very thorough professional, very reasonable man. Whatever he does, I'm sure he'll do as well as he can, and I would trust his judgment. But, you know, in terms of this particular appointment, I can't comment.
Yes, it's not been welcomed by the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, has it? I have huge admiration, but someone who's so closely associated with counter-terrorism, it could be misconstrued.
Yeah, I think the thing is, Nick, I've got so many issues that I have to comment on in London. I'm not going to start on West Midlands. I can only say that Peter Clark is an admirable professional, and whatever he's asked to do, I'm sure he will do well.
I did try. You mentioned James Patrick. I think he's called, if I've got this right, is this James Patrick on the line?
Yeah, morning.
Morning. You're through to the Commissioner. Go ahead.
Morning, boss.
Morning, James.
What I was going to ask you, sir, is are the Met going to be reviewing the way that you deal with whistleblowers in the future so that people don't have to go what I've been through?
We're always prepared to do that. Each case, as you will know, sadly through your experience, is not straightforward. So, of course, we're always prepared to look at that, and if there's anything you can offer us in that, we will, of course, we'll try and learn. It's a difficult balance to strike, obviously.
No, I completely appreciate that, and there is an awful lot, I think, which you could probably take on board from my experience. One thing that I was quite curious about, and seeing as I've got you on the phone for the first time, I will ask. After I'd been to the PASC and you'd appeared, I emailed and offered to meet with you and the Deputy Mayor. I was wondering why you never replied to that, because it left me a bit confused, to be honest.
I think we did reply. I'm not sure I replied, but the point we made was that, of course, as a commissioner, what I can't do is interfere in an ongoing discipline process, which is what you were involved in, sadly.
When I did email you, sir, I did say, set the discipline aside, let's talk about the...
No, but that's what I'm afraid, James, that's what you wanted to do, but it's not what I can do. So therefore, if I just finish, and then, you know, by all means come back. So that was not possible for me to separate the two. It is out of the way now, and it may be something we can look at now. But of course, I think it's public knowledge that you've given your resignation.
Yes, he's blogged on this, Commissioner.
Well, I've had no choice, really, have I, boss? I mean, these are things which are going to come out, and I don't want to talk about these on the radio with you. But I just felt.
You rang James. You say you don't want to talk about it on the radio. You called in, so it's your choice.
I wanted to say to you that I felt very, very let down, in particular by the senior levels of the Met, and I wanted to take the opportunity to say that. Now, I missed your bit because I was having a cuddle with my kids, so I'll have a listen later on, and if I've got any thoughts on what you've said, I will, of course, express them in writing, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I sincerely hope that people who want to expose wrongdoing in the Met get a slightly less raw deal in the future, and that if you genuinely are willing to listen and willing to move on with it, then I genuinely wish you all the best with that.
OK, well, two things I'd want to say, James. First of all, I'm sorry about your experience, because I'm sure that whatever's the rights and wrongs, you won't have enjoyed what you've gone through, nor your family. I think, secondly, you know, I'm certainly happy to consider meeting if you would want to, now that the misconduct process is out of the way. And the only final thing, I hope you'd be prepared to accept as well that, although you've got a very firm view about what you've seen and your experience, I have asked for some independent advice to find out whether your allegations are endemic or, in fact, your experience was a one-off. And at the end of that process, the inspectorate is looking at it. We'll both be better informed, I think, and hopefully at least you'll take that into consideration yourself, as much as I will have to.
I completely will. And like I said, I'd be welcome to have a meeting with you to talk this through, because I think there's been probably quite a lot in the way which has maybe interfered, I think, in what could have been quite a useful process. And I do think that some of the people that have been in charge of me have behaved in a way which is extremely questionable, and that would include the DPS.
All right, they're not here to defend themselves. Lastly, James, can I ask you, what are you going to miss about the Met?
What am I going to miss about the Met? I'm going to miss some of the really fantastic people of London that have made policing it such a genuine pleasure.
Look after yourself. More calls to the Commissioner after this.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
Butter Grill.
Got their preferred primary school place.
Take care of standard legal fees.
Search TalkTalk Unlimited. TalkTalk, a brighter home for everyone. Contract and £30 connect.
Now, if you're owed thousands, text yes to 82727. That's yes to 82727.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0845 6060 973.
Let's get more of your calls through to the Commissioner. Sally is in Cheshunt. You're on the radio. Sally, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Sally.
I wondered if you was going to just forget about the case of PC Keith Blakelock. I only see it a couple of times when it was at court, but then everything was on the television that the chap was found not guilty. I'm wondering, it was very, very dear to my heart what that policeman went through. I was visiting Tottenham at the time to see my mum, and I've just never forgotten it, and I just think that it's been brushed under the carpet.
Well, I think that Sally, first of all, I think the person I think about most is Elizabeth, Keith Blakelock's wife, who has had to suffer the original event, obviously the terrible murder of PC Blakelock, and then all the inquiries after that, and then most recently, obviously, the chap that had been charged was found not guilty, and we accept that verdict. But you think for the emotional roller coaster that she and the rest of Keith's family have been through, it's pretty awful, and of course Keith's colleagues who were with him at the time. So we're sad that obviously there's been no successful outcome, but as I say, the jury's made its verdict, and that's the end of it. But it's something that obviously I think for all that in Haringey has left a terrible and indelible mark, both the riot and the murder of Keith in the way that he was murdered. It was a terrible event, and tomorrow, sadly, is the 30th anniversary of the murder of Yvonne Fletcher. And I'll be at the scene of her murder together with a few colleagues, I'm sure quite a few colleagues, who will not forget. And that's how we feel about Keith Blakelock.
It shows what the men and women under your command do each and every day. Does this mean, as regards Keith Blakelock, that is effectively the case is closed now with the failure of this prosecution?
Yeah, unless there is any further information, of course, we would always follow that up. And we never close a murder case which is where we haven't got a conviction. So we'll always be open to the fact there's more information.
There's nothing new for the killer or killers of Keith Blakelock inside.
I think it's quite difficult in this case, given the amount of time that's passed, and various investigations have been made. So I think it's going to be difficult to move forward, but if new evidence came forward, we would pursue it.
Sally, thank you for your call, and obviously all thoughts with Yvonne Fletcher's family tomorrow. Very sad anniversary there as well. Ed's in Hounslow. You're on the radio, Ed.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Bernard.
Good morning, Ed.
I'd like to raise with you a very serious subject. You'll be aware that, this is not a good time for the Metropolitan Police in so many respects, and particularly within certain ethnic groups. And you will be aware that in consequence of the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence many years ago, there was an investigation carried out by Lord Justice Macpherson and a report, and Lord Justice Macpherson was so appalled at the fact that people of colour were going to police with complaints and just being turned away and not listened to, that he instituted...
Let's move to a question, Ed, because I've got so many people, and move you quickly to the question if I could, Ed.
OK, well, he instituted protocols to which the Metropolitan Police are bound to adhere to. And yet, despite that, they are breaching those protocols blatantly, as is in the publicised case here in Hounslow of solicitor Taranjit Chana, who reported to Hounslow Police that she was the victim of a racially motivated hate crime, a report which they do not have the prerogative to gainsay without...
Ed, what is your question?
The question is, why is it that Hounslow Police are in dereliction of their duty and refusing to do the duty that they are supposed to be doing?
Hold on the line, Ed.
Well, if there's a case that,
Are you aware of this case, the solicitor?
I've not heard of it.
OK.
But if there's any case like that people have got a complaint about, then let me know, email me, or if the solicitor themselves emails me, we'll have a look. But of course, we'll have a look at all the circumstances. And Ed, you made a very clear statement about what you think's wrong, but we'd have to look at all the circumstances.
Ed, I want you to talk to one of the team now. Stay on the line. We will refer this across to the Commissioner or one of his team, and we will get back to you. It's a little unfair. He doesn't have... I'm afraid I don't have full knowledge of this case. So, Ed, we will get to the bottom of it, but I think we have to move on now. 8:55 the time. Richard's in Reading. You're on the radio, Richard. Go ahead.
Hello. The question that I wanted to ask is that historically, there's always seemed to be a stigma regarding the recruitment process within the Metropolitan Police and also throughout the UK. And I wanted to ask the Commissioner what's being done not only to make the recruitment of different ethnic faiths more transparent, but also people who are gay or lesbian.
Okay. Well, Richard, I'm not sure I entirely accept that throughout the country it's got that stigma, but it's true that we need to be more representative, and I've made that very clear as part of our strategy as we want to be. At the moment, we're running at about 1 in 5 of our recruits is from a minority. It's a little harder to say in terms of LGBT community, the gay and the bisexual community, what representation there is, because people sadly will not always declare. So I can't be as sure about that. But I think it's a far more open culture that we have. I think 30 years ago people weren't. I think many parts of society weren't open to sexual orientation difference. But I think we can say that, first of all, in terms of minorities, it's getting better. And certainly the Met has got the highest percentage of minorities compared to any force in the country, about 11%. Needs to be a lot better. But we're getting up to 1 in 5, and I'm hoping that we can make more progress in these coming years. In terms of our police staff, it's about 1 in 4 minorities. Our PCSOs, 1 in 3. And our special constables, again, 1 in 4. So I think we can show that we've made huge progress over the last few years, but I'm afraid a lot more to make.
All right, thank you for that. You mentioned a question from me. We talked a little bit about your appearance before the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, which is when you said you didn't know when, why, or on whose authority some database on corrupt officers was destroyed. And you were asked if you'd contacted either Lord Stevens or Lord Blair, who were Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner at the time. I don't think you had. Have you subsequently?
No, we haven't, because what we need to do is to establish the facts first.
And you need to speak to them to do that, Commissioner?
Well, not necessarily, no. I think the first thing is we need to establish the facts about the original allegation, and we're in the process of doing that. I think we've now interviewed 20 witnesses. We've got far more clarity about for example, if you remember, there was an allegation that there were lorry loads of shredding. We've now discovered we think that's about 4 bin bags loads. We initially were told this had happened in 2003. We now think it's happened in 2001. So what we discover in these things is gradually as you get more information, the story becomes clearer. Now, if it was me now, and somebody said, are you shredding documents in that department, I really would struggle to say what's happening. So at the point at which we need to talk to them, I'm sure someone will. But I was challenged...
Would that be you?
Well, not necessarily, no, because I think...
Wouldn't you want to ring your former...
No, because, and I made this point to the Home Affairs Select Committee, which is that had I gone into that meeting and said, I've rung my predecessor and asked them what their view of the world is, they might say, were you trying to arrange a story? Were you trying to conspire with them about an inquiry that was ongoing? So whichever way we go, there's a risk of a criticism. But until we've established the facts, I've no intention of ringing them about this, leading to a position where I'm challenged about the propriety.
My listeners sitting in their cars and at their homes and their offices, you'd ring your predecessor and say, John, what the bloody hell went on back in 2000 and whenever?
The potential is that we've seen with this public inquiry, which is to come around undercover officers, that these, any one of my predecessors, I may one day be called as a witness. And if there's a witness to something, then it's quite proper we do that in a proper way. That's exactly what I intend to do. We're not going to rush it. We were criticised in the Mark Ellison review for having rushed an inquiry and not discovered material we should have. So I intend to do it properly, and I intend to do it carefully. And that doesn't mean a private telephone call with one of my predecessors about something that somebody says, what did you talk about? What were you trying to arrange?
Let's get a couple of emails if I can. This comes from Pierre in Dartford. Is it necessary now with the Times newspaper's revelations about Nigel Farage, the police investigate UKIP?
I'm not sure exactly what the allegations are, although I've seen something about expenses.
Yes.
So should the relevant authorities think a crime has been committed, I'm sure they will let us know.
OK. And lastly, Fiona in Clapham, with the collapse of the case against Nigel Evans, is too much money and time being spent on these alleged past offences?
I think we're trapped in a bit of a fix here. I think this country doesn't have, as some countries have, a bar on historical investigations or convictions. Just a time.
A lot of your men and women's time and money taken up with this, isn't there, Commissioner?
There is, but of course, whichever we do, we're going to be wrong. We were accused, as you know, historically, of ignoring people who came forward in the Jimmy Savile case, for example, a man who's now dead.
And possibly Cyril Smith.
So we apparently ignored them at the time. If they come forward now and they say, now you're ignoring me again, what are we to do? Are we to ignore them twice? I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we've got to investigate. I think there's no doubt that both the Crown Prosecution Service and ourselves are going to make a probably a more rigorous test of the evidence, given it's such a long time ago.
And that's needed
something that's
now,
difficult.
isn't it?
Well, I'm sure that it's something that all of us will look at in terms of these historical cases, but I already know that these cases are reviewed very seriously before a charge is contemplated.
All right.
And what you can never do, none of us can do, is predict the outcome of a jury.
Indeed. I'm afraid we pick up the outcome of this particular part of the show because it's over. Sir Bernard, come and see us again soon. Thank you very much indeed. Sir Bernard Hogan Howe. Thank you, sir. Commissioner of Metropolitan Police, appearing here on LBC, where news is next.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain.